All righty, let's take a look at the all-in-one diesel heater. What these are is these are parking heaters. That's a variation of it. And the reason they call it the all-in-one is because they are basically self-contained other than the battery or the power supply. So let's get right to it and let me show you. It'd be easier for me just to bring this up here and show you what the components are. On the front, you've got the control and you've got the vent or the exhaust. On the back, you have the intake. This is the air that circulates inside the box and keeps it cool, but it also gets sucked through past the burner chamber and comes out through the vent or the exhaust, and that's how it heats it. So unless this is damaged, there's no risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. However, always use a carbon monoxide detector. That's a CO detector anytime you're using this. All right. This is the wiring. It comes with a fuse. Simple, positive, negative. It's 12 volt. This is the fuel tank, which I think is 5.5 liters, which is right at 1 gallon. You just fill it through here. You can see it through the window. The bottom, because I've got some diesel in it, it's going to be a little harder to look at, but this is the air intake for the combustion chamber. And you can see it has a little filter on it. And then this is the exhaust for the combustion chamber. Where I've been using it in my shop, I have a little bit of muffler wrap, which is a heat protector on it. So now let's take it apart and see what it looks like on the inside. Two other things that come with this is the ductwork. This stretches out to about 1 meter, I guess, which is right at 3 feet. It's a 3-inch, and it basically just sticks on here. It also comes with some clamps and stuff to hold that. The other thing that it has, which I really like, is this remote control, and we'll get into that a little later when we start talking about the controls. So, let's take this bad boy apart. This thing comes well protected. I think it's got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 screws holding this cover on. Then the last thing you have to do after you got the screws removed is take the cap off the tank. And just pull the cover right off. All right. So what you have is you have the fuel tank. You have the pump that's installed inside. You have the fuel line. That runs down and into the heater itself. So as you can see, this is just a regular Chinese parking heater. And it is just self-contained. So, you know, it's great. This is part of where the air comes in, and this kind of cools the exhaust port. And what I mean by that is the combustion chamber exhaust port. So you don't really ever run a risk of sucking in fumes unless you were dumb enough to take your exhaust and put it right up here where it would be sucked right in, and then the fumes would come to you. So I always make sure that this is pushed down, turned away, and if the wind is blowing in this direction, I turn it a different way. So see, it's simple. That's all there is to it. The controls is just the wiring harness that goes here to control the pump. And that controls the pump and the fan speed. The air mix and everything is also adjustable, but my recommendation on that is do not mess with it. And I'll show you when we look at the controls here in a few minutes, but there again, don't mess with the fuel mixture unless you have the gauges and the proper equipment to do it. Fan speeds, yeah, you can probably tweak those a little bit, but other than that, let's just leave well enough alone. So, there it is. Pretty simple. These are the components. Now let's take a minute and look at the control. Alrighty. When you buy these all-in-one, you have to take a look and see which controller is on it, because I think there's 3 different ones that you can get. This particular model comes with the 3-button controller. And the way you use that is pretty simple. If you look at the instructions, it'll have you way out in left field somewhere and you won't know which way's up. So just let me kind of explain it to you, and hopefully it'll make it a little easier. Alrighty, how do you run this 3-button controller? Pretty simple. Center button, power comes on. Press it and it goes through the menu. I'm going to stop on the clock. This is a clock menu. If you leave it plugged in all the time to power, then you can set it up as a clock. Me, this is my portable one, so you're just going to see however long I've had it hooked up. Alrighty, that's the clock. Press it again. It goes to 11 degrees C, centigrade or Celsius. And this is the room temperature. Press it again. Now it says 12 degrees. That's the burner chamber temperature. That's how you know how hot the burner chamber is, and therefore you'll know how hot the air coming out is. Press it again, and it shows that we're hooked up to 13.3. You see the little V? That's for volts. That's 12. It's a 12-volt battery, but they will put out a variation anywhere from around 11 volts to 14 volts. And this will run easily on 10 to 14 volts. Currently, my system is charged really well, and you're at 13.3 volts. So, let's touch into that a little more. If this thing gets below into the 9 volts, it will shut itself down. So, that's pretty nice. Now, let's see, where are we at next? All right, this is part of the system that, like I was talking about, you don't want to touch. You don't want to get into unless you have the proper equipment to do it. This is the error codes. There are like 11 of them. There is a page in the manual that shows what the different codes are. I think 1 is low voltage, 5 is like overheating, but you'll just have to look at those. Then I'm back to the clock. So let's look at it again. Clock, room temperature, burner chamber temperature, number of volts. This is the part we don't want to mess with. And there's your error codes. And then we're back to the clock. All right, the first thing you're going to have to do when you get these is prime them. They don't come with any diesel in them, so what you're going to want to do is make sure you've got all the air out of the fuel line and out of the pump. And to do that, you put some diesel in, and then you hit the power button. And now you're going to hit these 2 at the same time, and that shows H and off. This will run, once you turn this on, it will run for a cycle, a priming cycle. To turn it on, you just hit says H on, and you hear the pump. This one's already primed, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. And that's all there is to it. You turn it on, you let it prime through its cycle. Eventually, that will get all the air bubbles out, and it'll be ready to go. And then back to the menu. Now, to control how hot the air coming out of this is, you are in this P, which is for frequency, and 1.5 is the low setting. Press this button, and you see it continues to go up, and now you're at 2. This will go all the way up to 5.5, I believe, and then you can bring it back down to the lowest setting. the fan will automatically adjust. The higher that you go up in frequency, the higher the fan runs. Frequency is pretty simple. It's basically the number of times the pump strokes or pushes fuel into the burner chamber. And on the low frequency, you'll hear it. It'll go at a slow rate. When you turn it up, it'll get faster and faster and faster. Because it's going faster, it's putting more fuel into the burner chamber, the fan's blowing harder, so you're getting a higher temperature. Let's look at it again. I'm gonna go up, and I can take it back down. That is how you control this. Okay, one more thing I want to show you. That's how to get into the advanced settings. This does require a code, and I will give you that code. The advanced settings allows you to change the frequency, the lower end of the frequency, the higher end of the frequency. It also allows you to change the RPMs of the fan on the lower end and the higher end. And it allows you to do some things like control fuel mixtures and that type of thing. So I'm going to show you this, but please don't mess with those fuel mixtures and that type of thing unless you know what you're doing and you have the proper gauges and equipment to do it. But to tweak the frequencies and the RPMs on the fan, it comes in a little handy at times. So here's how you do it. You press the control button. Then you press this once and hold it. You see it change the menu. Hit it a second time and hold it. Changed it again. Hold it a third time and you get this line. Now, the code is 1688. So we're going to go, let's see. 1, hit the center button. 6, hit the center button. 8, hit the center button. 8, hit the center button. Now, as you see, this is controlling the frequency. You can either go up or you can go down. I'm going to put it back to the factory setting, 1.5. And then I hit the center button, and now it's taking me to the upper, 5.4. And there again, I can go up or I can go down. And I'm going to put it back at the factory setting. This is the speed of the fan, the RPMs of the fan. It's at the lower end, 1500. You can adjust it by doing the same thing here. Hit center button again, and that locks it. Go all the way through, and now you're at your upper end. And you can go and do the same thing. So now we're up into that where it's the air mixtures and all the stuff that you really don't want to mess with. And now I'm back to the clock. So there, that's the advanced settings. Remember, the code is 1688. Okie doke. One last thing. How do you turn it on? To turn it on, you hit the power button and you press and hold it. But before I do, I want to tell you how this works. This thing has to go through a cycle. It's going to come on. It's going to blow for a few minutes. The glow plug will come on. It'll heat the fuel, and then it'll start firing. Once it gets up to temperature and speed, it will slow itself back down. The glow plug will turn off. The power consumption will drop down nice and low. And then at that point, you can adjust, do I go higher or lower? Do I want the temperature higher or lower? So to turn it on, it's pretty simple. You just turn it on, and then you press and hold the center button. This symbol showed the glow plug came on. Diesel has to be heated, and then once it gets to the point that it combusts, then the glow plug can go off and it will combust on its own. This is the symbol for the pump, and this is the symbol for the fan. And you can see up here it's got the volts. So right now I am in the voltage because the V's on, and you can see that it's consuming quite a bit of power. It dropped from 13.3 to 11.6. I can change this now. There's our room temp. Let's see. Room temp, and hit it again, and that's the combustion temp. And you'll see that's going to drop because it's pulling in cold air. But as that burner starts getting warmer, the glow plug warms it up, this will continue to increase until it gets to the point that everything ignites and it starts running. and then it slows back down. Once it slows back down, you can adjust this here to anything that you want. And I'm going to take it down to the lowest setting, which is where I always start this at. Now, to turn it off, you just repeat what you did to turn it on. Yeah. Hear that? The pump came on. The burner is starting to go. The temperature of the burner chamber is coming up. And that will quiet down as soon as it gets warm. Now, when you turn this off, it also goes through the same cycle of, but this time it's cooling down instead of warming up. So to turn it off, like I said, you just repeat the process. You just hold the center button and it goes off. Immediately the pump stops, the glow plug will turn itself off, and then the system will cool down and shut itself off completely. That's how you use this 3-button controller. All right, the only thing that I did not talk about was this really nice little remote control. It really is great for me when I'm in my truck camper. I can actually look out the window at this and adjust it up or down and be able to see what frequency I'm at and what my temperature is coming out of the vent. So, it's pretty simple. It's got a protective thing on it, so if you got it in your pocket, you can't turn it on or off. To increase it up or down, you just hit the plus or the minus, and that controls your frequency. And then the other 2 buttons are on and off. Simple. Simple and easy. Alrighty. Well, we've talked about that these are a all-in-one self-contained unit. You just have to provide a 12-volt power supply. And it needs to be at least 10 amps. I think you'd be much better off with the ability to have about 15 amps. But 10 amps will take care of it. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps. I hope I've addressed all the issues of what people have been asking for, and give you a better understanding of how these all-in-one heaters work. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Later.